I probably don't have a lot of questions about your junior year, but I did just have a couple, and more philosophical. Raffi admitted to me that it was really hard for him to move down to Class B. And for him, he was pursuing that fourth straight
Right.
Class A championship. And for him, he kind of lost a chance to do something that no one had ever done. And that kind of hit him in the chest a little bit. How did it affect you moving down to Class B as a junior?
Yeah, it was a huge bummer for sure. I didn't have the same history as Raffi, obviously. But yeah, that was definitely a big bummer. But it's like everything. I mean, it wasn't obviously as deep ultimately, but I think part of it is you just didn't know. And, Class A, Class B, one sounds better than the other. But ultimately, up until state meet, it really didn't affect us. And like I said, at least for me, I was so tunnel visioned on hitting times that, I wanted to win. But ultimately, just throw me in the pool. And as long as I go the time I'm trying to go, I'm fine with it. So I would have rather been in Class A, I think, just because of the sort of prestige of it. But I enjoyed the Class B experience at the end of the day. I certainly, by senior year, for me, my second year back at it, it was, I'd sort of internalized it, and it was what it was.
Well, one thing that it offered you guys a chance to do, and it's not that you didn't win state championships as a team at the Class A level, you did. But at the Class B level, I don't know if your team wasn't quite as strong that junior year, but in some of the things that I went back and read, obviously I know Sam had graduated, I think, the 92 to 93 year. And so you guys might not have been as deep of a dual mean championship team. And Mike did not hesitate, publicly. I found newspaper articles where he really tried to push it off on Alma, that they were the favorites and that you guys were just he almost kind of tried to play it up like you guys were the sisters of the poor coming down to Class B, and that we'll just do the best we can, But to that point of the Class B experience, guys like Greg Karapetian came up huge, like guys that might not have been important to your state meet team, had you been a Class A team, wound up playing really big roles. So from a team perspective, at least in 93, there was some benefits there.
No, for sure. And as you mentioned that, I think that's absolutely right. My senior year team and my junior year team weren't nearly my first 2 year teams. Those were some quality teams. I'm pretty sure one of those years we broke one of the national records in some relay or other. I mean, that was those are some good teams.
Can I ask you about that real quick, about that 92 200 free relay? So
is that what it was?
I gathered a little bit of background on that Mike had maybe mentioned it during the week that you guys would be close, but there wasn't a lot of national championship talk. And I think the story that Raffi told me was that it wasn't even maybe until after the race that somebody came, at least to him, I don't know if it was to the whole group, and said, you guys broke the national record. And he kind of played it up that it wasn't necessarily front of mind, and that he even that week was kind of trying to remind you guys you could lose. Don't take it that it's for granted. Was that a little slice of Mike there?
Yeah, it's 100% right. I don't know why, because it wasn't hard to figure out. But we didn't set. We talked about goal times and training. That never came up. It was. I don't know that we had the same thing for relays, but it never once did I ever remember a conversation saying, "Hey, you guys are all go pretty fast. If you hit your splits, you can break some record." Never once, and it just wasn't winning. 100%, and absolutely terrified that someone else would beat us. 100% true. And so, I think what Raffi's recollection is entirely consistent with mine.
One quick question on the butterfly, and then we'll move on. This may have been, in a career like yours, you accomplished many things. But I thought one of the cooler things at the 93 state meet was when you went 49.97 in the butterfly, and they announced that you had broken Mark Spitz's 100 butterfly pool record that had stood since, I don't know if it was 70, 71, somewhere in there, the Spitz had set the record. it didn't matter how old the record was. It mattered whose record it was.
Right.
When they announced that you broke Mark Spitz's record, like there was like a response in the arena, in the pool. Like, that's pretty cool. Did that mean anything to you at the time?
Oh yeah, that was cool. What pool was that? Was that Eastern Michigan or was that MSU?
93 is at MSU. So yeah, that was at the McCaffree Pool.
I think I may have, I don't talk about my swimming very often, but I think I may have had a conversation with my son that, like, that's probably one of the coolest things. I didn't remember, I forgot it was Mark Spitz, but I knew I had set a record at Michigan State, like a pool record. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I 100% remember that. The whole 100 fly thing was so fun. That was a blast. I had a blast. I can't remember who someone, I don't think I told people, because some of my friends were like, you did what? You swam what?
Yeah.
So yeah, because do you remember after state meet, Michigan would host that, like, you could just go swim and like get your times for other events kind of thing, and we'd all just go.
The age group state meet the following week, or a different
no,
meet?
I remember at least after a couple of the years, and like the day after high school state meet, I thought U of M would just open up their pool for time trials. And when they got the fancy new pool, which isn't so new anymore, and we would all just, especially it was definitely after Class B, because we didn't get to see a lot of our friends right. So we would come to this meet, we get to see our friends from Groves and Seaholm and all the other, and the Ann Arbor schools, and just be like, have a chance to catch up and connect. And it was super low pressure, and you'd go swim 400 IM and just do stuff for fun. And so, yeah, I think a lot of guys at that were like, wait, you just swim 100 fly? What'd you do that for? And that was a lot of fun. But yeah, that pool record, was definitely one. If I had to guess, if I sort of search through some family photo album somewhere, I'm guessing someone took a, kind of photo of that, or some memory of that. I don't have it, but yeah, that was cool.
For sure. You talk about, that being a lot of fun for you. Adam Messner told me the same thing. I think he was a few years behind you and obviously went on to Stanford, but he also swam the 100 butterfly 1 year, kind of a team thing. Right. And he said something very similar, that it was just so fun to not have that pressure.
Yeah.
200 and the 500 and what my expectations, other people's expectations are. Nobody knew what you were going to go in the butterfly that day at all. And I don't know if you did.
No, I'm sure I must have wanted to get under 50, because I did. But yeah, it was whatever happens. I would have been probably angry with myself if I hadn't, but it is one of those events. I definitely remember being like, that was a lot of fun. I don't know that I ever really did a legit 100 fly ever again. After I think, what, I did the same thing in college at 1 year at Harvard, for same reason, to sort of position the team. But yeah.
Sure. Real quick, before we get to your senior year, maybe a broader question about summer swimming for you and long course swimming and all of that. How did you feel? Like, did you like long course swimming? How did you train, particularly in that year leading into that dynamic senior year? Just kind of curious what your summers were like.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest about like my career, I definitely, I never quite swam nearly as well long course as I would have wanted to. For me, right, Olympics was always one of those things that I, at some point, thought I had a legitimate chance of doing, but I was never able to really perform long course the way I did short course. And I, a bunch of reasons. So I enjoyed long course. I just wish I was better at it. I think it's certainly hard in Michigan, right? We didn't get to swim it year round. And so that was, those Michigan summers were tough. But even later in my career, I never really put I never put a single long course season together that I was sort of happy with. I never once really came close to what I thought I wanted to do. And there's a big reason I didn't keep swimming after college. I was just like, I've never put it together. I didn't think it was terribly realistic that if I hung around for another year and a half, I'd really have a chance to make the team. And so that's kind of when I hung it up. So I liked long course. I love, especially in Michigan, like that summer swim season is so fun because it's so different and you get to be outdoors, which we don't get to do. I loved everything about it except the fact that I didn't really swim that great. So other than that, I loved it. So,
obviously, though, performance doesn't always mirror preparation. You know, like, did you feel like you were really well positioned going into that 94 season in your senior year? Like, did you feel like this was going to be a big year as you were going into it?
Senior year, yeah, I felt, and I'm trying to remember. So senior year for short course high school season, 100%. I don't remember exact, but yeah, I had big things in mind, and Mike probably put an extra effort with me. I remember he did some things with me that year that we'd never done before. I knew he was sort of, it felt like extra invested in my senior season. So 100%. I think part of it too was, like we said, by my senior year, there wasn't a Raffi, there wasn't a Sam, there wasn't a Mark, there wasn't all these guys. There weren't a ton of, we were good enough to still win, but it just wasn't the same team that it had been historically. But so, yeah, I was 100% into it. I feel like, let me think, because that was like Olympic trial year. I know I didn't make trials cut because I didn't go to trials. So I actually bet, because I don't remember what the trials cut was for the 200 free, because you remember back then, at least you had short course cuts and long course cuts.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't get it. And so I actually think, as bizarre as it sounds, I was probably pretty bummed after my 200 free at state meet my senior year. I probably actually didn't hit my goal time. I probably wouldn't miss it by more than a tenth or two, but I'm sure my goal time was under the Olympic trial cut, and I know I didn't get it.
Eric, I'm telling you, I'm going to write a separate second book about state record swims that the record setter was unhappy with. I mean, it's unbelievable. I have so many examples.
I'm sure,
right?
yeah.
But you know what? I've said this to some other guys before. That's why you're Eric Matuszak. That's why Dan Stevenson was Dan Stevenson. You know, this dude, nobody had ever broken 144 in the history of the state of Michigan, and he went 141. And I was so excited to hear him talk about this swim. And when he got there, he was like, I wanted to be 140. Yeah. And I think that that's a commonality in a lot of these guys that I'm talking to, is astronomical goals, and it's surprising to me when I talk to guys and hear that they're not totally satisfied with swims that are kind of legendary. I mean, Eric, that record stood 14 years. Right. 1994 to 2008, that was the state record in Michigan, and I'm not questioning that you weren't, happy with it. I totally get it. But, kind of asking you to kind of address what I was saying, like, that goal setting is...
No, it's probably not a healthy biochemical balance point. I 100% recognize that. And I actually recall a few years ago watching the Olympics, and I can't remember who, but some American woman, I think she broke the world record, won her own best time, obviously. It may have been a prelim swim. It wasn't a final swim. I remember that for sure. But I think she went like, it might have been 2 minutes flat or whatever the time was. It was like right 100th of a second away from popping under to go 59.9 or 39, whatever it was. And she was legitimately, genuinely, really disappointed with the outcome. And the NBC or whoever was interviewing was like, she didn't understand it. She didn't understand it. And my wife was like, and I just said, I 100% know exactly what she's feeling. And it's just, and I'm sure this is true of athletes and all sorts of people who sort of are maybe not wired as balanced as they should be. But yeah, 100%. When you set a goal and you are working towards it, if you don't get it, it doesn't matter all the other stuff that happens, the placing, the records, whatever. If you are committed to trying to get something and you don't get it, you're disappointed. And so, yeah, it's not a healthy balance. I fully recognize that, but it's just kind of how I was wired, or am wired, I guess.